Welcome back, fight fans. We're back with some more UFC action. This time, we're just going to be talking about UFC Columbus because there's finally we're finally going to have a break this weekend. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love watching the UFC, but you know what? Sometimes maybe you need a break in the action, and then you'll be even more excited when you come back, especially when you've got, what is it, UFC 274, 273? I can't even remember at this point, but I do know how amazing that's going to be. But we're going to talk about that next time, of course. This time, just UFC Columbus. So we're going to go through all of those, and then that'll be it for the night. It's going to be a nice short one, but it's going to be fun. So last week, well, I should say a week and a half ago, we had UFC London, and that was absolutely insane. One of the best cards I've ever seen, if not the best card I've ever seen. So obviously, a little bit of a dip in Columbus. And I mean, really what was the most obvious part was just the crowd, the difference in crowd. I mean, there were some boos in in London, but that was reserved for usually mostly the Russians, which kind of makes sense at this point. But in Columbus, my God, there were some entire fights where they were booing. I mean, it was just not a great scene all around. Definitely not one of the better cards, but it did still have its great moments. So we'll be going through all of that. The first fight on the prelims, Luis Saldana beat Bruno Souza. That was one of the many decisions on the card. And it opened up really good, I gotta say. The first fight of the night, they were trying to put on a show already. It was already looking good. Great striking from both of them. But it seemed like Saldana was the one getting ahead there. He started to steal the momentum a bit, got some takedowns in. Makes sense. But, it was a little bit tough, I will say. It was a little bit tough to see who was ahead on the cards after the second round. Souza was walking forward and had the striking numbers, but Saldana got some of the takedowns to kind of throw away the momentum. So you're never really sure what the judges are going to think after that. If it were me scoring this fight, I was saying I had it at 1-1. Again, this is in the article that would have been on Sunday. I kind of read through it. That's basically what I do. Anyway, it was basically about 1-1. I was going about, dead even going into the third round there. I thought both of them tried to get it in right at the end, of course. I mean, if you know it's close, you got to do everything you can. That's what we saw in the third round. Interestingly, Loki's being a fucking idiot, of course. Interestingly, though, you know what? Saldana didn't really have the numbers in the third round, and I wasn't really sure. I didn't really think he was winning, but you know what? I think why the judges went the way they did, and what probably would have happened to me if I was also there in person judging it, the showmanship. This is pretty much the only fight I've ever seen, maybe, there might be some exceptions, where a decision was actually won just because somebody was actually being kind of a showman. He was trying to tell him to come forward and all that, basically to show that, he's the one that should be winning the decision, essentially. And honestly, I actually think that's probably what won him the decision there. It's crazy to say, and you don't normally see that, but this is honestly the one time I could say that that was probably what happened here. Very interesting. And all the judges saw it the same, 29-28. I didn't actually look at the card, so I don't know where the scoring was because you can look that up online if you're curious. But I would assume that they probably also had it 1-1 and that the last round was the one that switched it. But yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. The next prelim was actually one that I had talked about. It was a ranked one. It was David Dvorak, Mateus Nicolau. I knew this was going to be close. I said it was going to be close. I said everybody should watch this one because they're flyweights. I mean, you never want to miss the flyweights. They're just all over the place. It's crazy to watch. And this one was no different. And we knew that going in. But I did say this was kind of interesting because Dvorak came into this. I forget how long his win streak was. 16 fight win streak going into this, and he was 3-0 in the UFC. But what was interesting was none of those wins were over anybody that are currently ranked. Whereas if you went with Nicolau, and this is why I gave the edge to Nicolau on this one, he is also, what is it, 2-0 since he returned into the UFC because he was cut originally. I think it was 2019. Yes, 2019. Since then he had beaten Manel Kopp and Tim Elliott, both of whom are ranked and have looked very, very good since that loss as well. Actually, just all around look good. I mean, Tim Elliott always looks, well, I mean, he's kind of awkward looking, but he does a good job. Manel Kopp always looks good. So that's why I gave Nicolau the edge on this one. And he was the underdog. So I hope you pick Nicolau, like I said. You would have cashed in. Another nice one there. Another underdog that I'm getting right. I'm doing really well with these underdogs lately, I gotta say. Lately. Not always, but lately. I've gotten one right on each card, at least one right on each card. The underdog, and this was one of them. I'm very happy with this one. It was very close though. The first round, very slow, lots of booing. This was one of the fights where there was lots of booing. I mean, there were about 10 strikes thrown, and that's being generous in the first round. And for flyweights, that's ridiculous. That's just silly. That's like heavyweights, I could see that 10 strikes thrown by each guy, probably going to be huge. Could even win that way. But flyweights, I mean, 10 on either side. And like I said, that was being generous. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would have booed, but I was getting like, okay, like maybe you should do something. Maybe you should do a little something here. So the first round, I mean, who knows what's going on in that round? It's hard to tell. I thought maybe Nicolau, because he had a couple of bigger shots in. But Dvorak was moving forward with constant pressure. So based on the criteria, technically that actually could have gone towards Dvorak. But I mean, honestly, it's a wash on that one. Who knows? That's one of the real times where I would not want to be a judge. The rest of the time, honestly, I think I should be a judge because I have gotten it right every single time. So, I mean, I probably should be a judge. But anyway, this would be one of the times that I would not want to be a judge. In the second, they started to do a little bit more, but it was dead even until Nicolau landed a bomb, dropped Dvorak on his back, busted open his nose with an elbow on the ground. So obviously he won that round. Nicolau opened up the final round. He stumbled Dvorak again with some good looking combos. That was the first part of the round though. But he did find himself in a bit of trouble. Dvorak landed a nice takedown for about the last half of that final round. It's tough with that because, I mean, it was so close. The second round, clearly Nicolau. But the other one, the first round, I mean, nothing happened. So really could have gone either way. And then in the third round, I mean, Nicolau had the first half. Dvorak had the second half. What do you do here? I thought it was probably Nicolau. So I was saying 29-28, but I wasn't really sure. The judges ended up agreeing though, and they all saw it 29-28. Again, I didn't look at the exact cards, so I don't know where they allocated their points. I mean, obviously Nicolau won the second one, but the first and third, who knows? Who knows? I had Dvorak probably the first one because of that pressure, but the third round, I was thinking, oh wow, there's a bit of a lag there. The third round, I was thinking Nicolau because of the striking there. But who knows? Who knows? It's beggars I don't even know the saying on that one. I was gonna say a saying, but honestly, I couldn't remember it. Anyway, what's next for them though? Honestly, they both looked really good. Neither guy should really be that upset by this. I mean, they both could have done a little bit more, maybe, but they both look pretty good. So good on either side. Nicolau, as for him, he's beaten 3 ranked opponents in a row. Cap, Elliott, now Dvorak. I mean, after this, you got to assume that he's going to be fighting somebody in the top 5. We're going to talk about it later, but I think Askarov would make a lot of sense, I think, because, Nicolau is on his way up. He's beaten 3 pretty tough guys, I got to say. I mean, all 3 of them are ranked and all 3 of them are pretty good. It's not like he's just beating ranked people that don't even belong in the rankings, and Askarov, we're going to talk about it later, but he lost. So, I wouldn't really say he's on his way down because he's still basically the number 3 contender, let's say, instead of being number 2. So he's still got that. But, why not mix it up a bit? Why not get Nicolau in the conversation for being up there? Because, we got to mix it up a little bit. I mean, it's getting a little stale up there, except for, of course, Kai Kara-France. But again, we're going to talk about that later. What was I going to say? Askarov, yes. Maybe even Pantoja, that would make sense. But I think it would make a lot more sense in terms of him actually having a chance to win against Royval or Perez. I think those would be the perfect matchups because Nicolau is really good. He's amazing. He proved himself, especially in this one. But can he stand up to Askarov or Pantoja, who might even be slightly better than Askarov? I don't know. They're both pretty similar and they're both incredible. So can he stand up with those 2? I don't know. But I do think Royval and Perez, those would be very close, very interesting to watch. I would love to see that. That makes the most sense. But that is what I was going to say. That's right. The thing is, though, when he let himself loose, that's what I was going to say. Right. He was doing well when he let it loose, which is what happened a bit in the second round and definitely in the first half of the third round there. He actually let himself loose, went absolutely insane, wasn't getting hit, destroying Dvorak. So, I mean, when he actually gets it going, he's amazing. And honestly, I really do think that he could compete with somebody at the top. I don't know about Moreno or Figgy. It'd be very close at that point if he could let it go. I think it would be really tightly contested there. But he's got to let it go. He's got to actually do something. But instead, he chose to kind of barely get through to win the decision. I mean, he could have decisively won that decision, like very easily won that decision if he was letting it go just a little bit more. He doesn't have to go crazy. You don't want to get finished. You don't want to get stuck somewhere. But he was being pretty tame. So I think he's just got to work on that a little bit. And then he's going to be, really, really good. But as it stands, Royval or Perez, if he can let go, I think he could compete with anybody up there. He really could. As for Dvorak, like I said, he still looked good. Maybe somebody like Cap or Ulanbekov, somebody on their way up would make a little bit more sense. Because, I mean, like I said, he hasn't beaten anybody who's in the rankings yet. So, Ulanbekov, Cap, they're on their way up. Makes a lot of sense. I'd like to see that. I think it'd be tough for anybody involved too. The next one after that, Wow, we're already 15 minutes in, and I've only talked about 2 fights. Jennifer Maia, Manon Fiorot. Actually, I've been told. Actually, I wasn't told this, but I saw on the broadcast that they pronounce it Fior, which, if you know French, I don't think that's right, but I'm gonna go with that. Manon Fior. I don't know. Anyway, that was the second one that I talked about last week, and I said this was going to be very close. The odds said otherwise, but I specifically said how close this was going to be. That being said, I did give, of course, the edge to Fior because of the fact that Maia, yes, she does have the experience, but she's also lost against the top people, which would be Chukagian. She's lost twice. Well, of course, she lost to Valentina, but there was also that. But she did have the experience. As for Fior, I mean, she's what, undefeated? What was the record here? No, 8-1. 8-1 with 3 wins in the UFC, all of them last year. So you got to go with that momentum. That's why I picked Fior there. But I did say exactly how close it was going to be, like I said. One thing that was pretty obvious right away was the size advantage of Fior. I mean, really, she was much bigger than Maia, which is a lot to say. She didn't look, which was interesting, she didn't just look taller and longer. She actually just looked bigger all around, just all around bigger, and also still somehow had a speed advantage. Pretty amazing, and that's very dangerous to see. But even though Fior had the obvious striking advantage, clearly being that she's a kickboxer, and of course she had the speed advantage and size advantage, you wouldn't think it would have been necessarily like that, because you kind of would have thought that Maia would have been going towards, of course, trying to get it to the ground, which she kind of was, of course. What was I going to say? Maia was still doing pretty good work. It was kind of close. She was landing some big shots. Interestingly, though, to open up the second round, Fior went in and got a wild judo throw to get on top of Maia. Definitely not what we were expecting. I mean, like I said, Fior, very much a kickboxer, not known for wrestling at all. In fact, I think that might have been her first takedown in the UFC. Oh, it was. Oh, actually, I can't remember. I can't remember, actually. I didn't write that down. But I know she's definitely not known for her wrestling. So that's a whole new thing. And not only did she do that, she kept doing it over and over again. What was I going to say? Maia did almost take advantage of it at one point, though. She grabbed her leg, started to work for a submission, but she got out of that, but was actually taken down for the first time in her UFC career and still ended up on top of Maia, which again is pretty amazing to reverse somebody like that, somebody like Maia. Then it was Maia who landed a huge strike, landed a huge head kick right after standing up. Not good for Fior there, but she got through that, of course. The final round, pretty even, just the same as the other 2 rounds. But it seemed like Fior edged ahead with a bit of extra activity, got some control time. And in the end, it was a pretty easy decision, 30-27 for Fior. But yeah, it was, I mean, it was an easy decision because it was pretty clear who won. But it was closer. It was closer than the odds suggested, like I said it would be. But yeah, now we know she can wrestle as well. So there's no doubt that there's something special about Fior. Of course, I mean, if you watch this fight, I mean, I think she definitely outperformed a lot of people's expectations. I knew she was going to be good, but I didn't think she was going to be able to do what she did, I guess, and win a fairly clear 30-27. Now, Maia is one of the few fighters that have been able to remotely challenge Valentina in any regard. So, like I said, the fact that Fior did this is very, very impressive, which is why I was a little surprised that the odds were so one-sided in the first place. Because Valentina, I mean, come on, very dominant. I would say probably the most dominant champion in the UFC right now, probably, that I can think of at least. Because she doesn't even really lose any rounds. So to say that Maya was actually doing something against her, that's quite a bit. That's pretty impressive. So even though Fiora is a kickboxer, she managed to stuff most of Maya's takedowns, which is pretty good. And she got up as soon as she was taken down each of those times, or she flipped it and reversed, got on top, got it, and she even got some huge takedowns of her own. So I mean, really, there wasn't really much to fault Fiora on here, really, at all. Not only that, she outstruck Maya by a decent amount on all three levels: head, body, and legs. So I mean, what can't she do? So she's asking for Chukagian next. And that makes so much sense. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly what I was going to say too. Because as we know, Shevchenko is going to fight Tyler Santos, I believe, because there's so many Santoses. I believe it's Tyler Santos she's fighting. That's going to be happening in Singapore, which is UFC 275, I believe. And I believe that's in June, from what I remember. I'm just going off the top of my head. I didn't write that down. I can't remember, but I think that's right. So that's going on. So Chukagian makes a lot of sense. Also, Chukagian's not going to get a title shot anytime soon, probably, because I mean, she's lost a couple. I think she's lost twice. She's lost at least once to Valentina. So, that makes so much sense. The only other person that I can think of that makes sense for Fiora now, because of what she just did, is Andrade. That's the only other one that makes sense. So we could see either one of those, but you're probably going to see Chukagian, and she asked for it, and it makes so much sense. That's what we're going to see. And if she can get past Chukagian, what else? Who else is going to stop her? She's obviously ready for the title shot at that point. I'm really excited to see what she's going to do, because there's not too many women that are actually rising up to really compete for a title shot. Really, I mean, there are ones that are like, okay, that person's probably next. They're probably not going to do much, but they're up next. Except for, of course, if you're talking about the strawweight division, that's a whole different animal. But we're talking about, of course, bantamweight, featherweight, and flyweight. I mean, it's just like the two people, one or two at the top, and then there's like nobody else that's really like kind of moving their way up. But finally, maybe with Fiora, we have somebody that's going to be going up there. Next fight. Wow, we're 22. Oh my goodness, we're taking so long, and we're only on fight number 4. I'm talking so much, but of course, we don't have anything to talk about for Saturday. So who knows? Why not take our time and talk a lot more about what we saw in Columbus? Fight number 4: Aliashkab Kizreev and Denis Tiuliulian. Wow, those are hard names. Of course, Kizreev, I mentioned this on the last week, only in the parlays. I didn't talk about the fight itself, but I did talk about the parlays, because when I was talking about it, I believe he was already at minus 1,000. Going into the later end of the week, he was about minus 1,250 or something, which is the biggest favorite we've seen in a very long time. So, of course, I was saying to throw him in a parlay. By the way, this was a little bit closer than people thought it was going to be. But I mean, what do you expect with two people that have never fought in the UFC for? That's why I was a little surprised by the odds, actually, when I thought about it, because I was like, why is he a minus 1,000 favorite when they're both doing their UFC debut? But anyway, he cashed in anyway. So it made the odds a little bit better. And he got a submission in the second round. It took him a while. He got smoked in the process in the first round, but he did get a takedown, and he started to get some groundwork going. He never really got a good submission attempt going, though, in the first round, but he did spend over half the round on top, so he clearly won that round. And in the second, what was I going to say? Tiuliulian. Wow. Tiuliulian. I don't normally have a problem with names, but that's a tough one. Maybe it's just like Tululin, and you just skip over all the I's. That's a tough name. He made it interesting, though, landed some big shots, possibly stumbling Kizreev there. So he did make it very interesting, which is why I said it was a little closer than the odds, definitely way closer than the odds suggested. because that should be a massacre at minus 1,000. After a bit of striking to open the second round, Kizreev, wow, I'm really struggling today. Kizreev got him to the ground, and it was all over after that. Took his back, got his arm around, and got a submission in his UFC debut. And that was actually the submission of the night right there. So another promising rookie. Definitely not rookie of the month. I should actually get into my bonuses for the month at the end of this. I might. I'm not sure. Anyway, next fight, Chris Gutierrez. And then I'm apparently I was pronouncing this one wrong too, because I thought it was Batgarel Dana. It's actually Batgetty Dana. Batgetty. Who knew? Like spaghetti, but with bats, I guess. The fight started off pretty even again, and I was actually looking forward to this one, by the way. I didn't talk about it last time because we had so many ranked fights to talk about, but I was actually really looking forward to this one because I know how good Batgetty is, and I know how good Gutierrez is too, so I figured this was going to be pretty close. Now, it started off pretty close. Gutierrez was doing pretty well with his kicks, shredded apart Dana's calf. Meanwhile, Batgetty was using his edge in power, stunned Chris a couple of times. Really, though, at the end of the round, Dana likely stole it on the cards, got a late takedown, and landed some huge ground and pound. I had actually put some money on Dana here, Batgetty, because of how good I knew he was. And it was looking good. It was looking good. The fight continued, was pretty even in the second round. But then out of absolutely nowhere, Gutierrez threw a wild spinning back fist to drop Dana to the ground and finished him with some good old ground and pound to get the TKO win. Amazing. I don't think that would ended up being, no, that wasn't the KO of the night, I don't believe. We'll see. We'll get to the bonuses at the end, of course. The next one, of course, another one that I had talked about last week, Sarah McMahon, Carol Hossa. And this was another one of those yanked ones. What am I doing? Another one of those ranked ones. I was going Hossa on this one, and this was one of the few ones, at least on the prelims, that I lost. But I did say how close it was going to be. I just thought because of her youth, because she was younger, had the better record at 15-3, hadn't lost in the UFC, I was going with Hossa on that. But of course, McMahon, been around since 2013, recently lost to the current champ, not Nunes, but Pena. So you knew she was going to be good. And she used all that wrestling experience, but also, by the way, silver medal in the Olympics for wrestling, which I didn't know about because that doesn't show up on Tapology. But anyway, knew that wrestling was going to come in handy, and it did. That's really what won her the fight, won her the decision here. Right from the start, McMahon showed everyone she's still able to compete against the top women in UFC history. Took Hossa down, smothered her for the better part of the first round. Hossa started to really get it back. Well, started to get it better, keeping Sarah back. But eventually McMahon got another takedown and stayed on Carol's back for most of the round. I mean, that was really just the story of most of the fight, was a lot of stuff on the ground. Lots of booing again, of course, which is kind of dumb because, I mean, you know, again, it wasn't like the other fight where there was booing, Dvorak and Nicolau, where they weren't doing anything. This was just dominance from McMahon, really. But yeah, lots of booing. It looked as though McMahon was just going to keep that position, cruise until the end of that round. But she actually almost ended the fight early with a fairly significant armbar attempt, I will say. Knowing that she lost both of those rounds, though, Hossa, I should say, ran straight at McMahon, gave it her all right at the start of the third. I mean, it looked like, I was like, whoa, okay. She literally ran full force, started to like completely caught McMahon off guard, started to land some good shots, but then McMahon got the wrestling in, and that was pretty much it from there. What was it? Oh, actually, no. What did I say here? More wrestling dominance. Hossa did switch the position, though. That's right. Did switch the position. Got some pretty brutal ground and pound. So she probably did win that round. So it ended up being a 29-28 win for McMahon. But yeah, too late. Too little too late for Hossa. It's too bad when that happens. Because it's like, you got it in yourself. So go with it in the first or the second round. Don't wait until the third when you know you're already losing the decision. Like, you can't do that. And that's why all of these, I don't want to say older fighters, but more experienced fighters, let's say. That's why they always end up winning the decisions. By the way, that is a secret that I have for a lot of the underdogs that I have and a lot of the decisions that I get that defy the odds, seemingly defy the odds because they're the underdog. I usually get it because I know that these older fighters know how to win decisions. So if they're not going to get finished, they're probably going to win. It's just how it works most of the time. So that's a little tip there. Speaking of tips, by the way, I'm going to be releasing a few betting. They're not necessarily tips right now, but I did do a couple of videos. I'm going to put them on YouTube on the weekend. They're all about, like, what are American odds? What are European odds? What are the implied odds? And what are British odds? So I made a few videos about that. I also made a video about parlays, what a parlay is, and why we use them so much. I'm going to be putting that on YouTube on the weekend. And of course, I will be doing more videos in the future. Of course, actually about betting tips, not just definitions and all that too. And that will be one of the tips. That will be one of the tips right there. Anyway, enough about that. Moving on to the main card. Mark Jacasey, Vyacheslav Borshev on this one. By the way, one of the ones that we had was canceled. I think it was supposed to open the main card. I can't remember where it was, but I'll just say that now. We also had another underdog, which was going to be Alexei Olenek beating Ilir Latifi. I got something in my eye. We were supposed to have that one, but then the morning of, which, by the way, really screwed me over because I always do my bets after the weigh-ins because, it makes sense. Like, what's going to happen after the weigh-ins? All the fights are already confirmed. Everybody's good. Everybody's weighed in. You know what's going on. But this time, one of them had COVID, so they couldn't fight. So the whole fight was canceled with Alexei Olenek and Ilir Latifi, which I was choked about because I was really happy. I was looking forward to seeing that underdog cash in. I was pretty sure we were going to see Olenek win that, but they moved it. I believe they actually did end up moving it to the next pay-per-view, the pay-per-view that we're going to be seeing. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. I believe they moved it to there. I think that's what I read online. We'll see. So maybe we'll get to cash in that underdog and next time. We'll see. But anyway, moving on to what actually did end up happening. I was going Borshev by finish on this one over Jacasey because I thought the power was going to be a little bit too much. But I don't think anybody saw coming what we actually did end up seeing. I mean, 10 seconds into the fight, and the strategy was pretty clear for Jacasey. He jumped in, pushed Borshev along the fence, and fought for takedowns. By the way, everybody, including myself online, was blown away because Jacasey is very much known as a striker, not a wrestler at all. So, I mean, we were looking into a striking matchup here. That's what we all thought. And that's what I said going into this, which is why I thought Slava was going to win, because I would say he's slightly quicker, slightly more powerful than Jacasey, which is exactly why Jacasey, of course, went for the wrestling approach. But I didn't think he had it in him. But he did in this case. It took him a while, but he got it. He did get hit pretty bad a couple of times. But Mark finally ended up dragging Slava down to the ground. And he never really got too much going on the ground, but Jacasey clearly won the first round, notched a couple of takedowns there, keeping Slava down there for the last part of the round. In the second, Mark dragged him down much earlier, dominated him even more than the opening round. In fact, it was so dominant, you could have maybe even argued a 10-8 because really Slava couldn't get anything going at all. And again, a lot of booing this entire fight. Like I said, there were so many fights that night that got booed. This was another one. And it may not have made the audience happy, but Mark got the fight to the ground again at the start of the third and just controlled him there again to win the decision. Not even close because he just couldn't get anything going. And again, who saw that one coming? I don't think Borshev saw it coming at all. I wouldn't say he was unprepared for that, but I think he probably would have practiced his wrestling a little bit more had he known that that was going to be the approach. So kind of sucks, but hey, you know, you got to do what you got to do to win. Next one, Neil Magny, Max Griffin. I said how close this was going to be. I had a decision by Magny going into it because, again, because of that experience, which is what I said before. Because of that experience, I was going with Magny, but I said how close it was going to be because I knew how good Griffin was. Now, the fight started off just as even as expected, but took a turn after Griffin landed an absolute bomb that dropped Magny. I was a little worried about that one. So it was pretty close, but you know, probably Griffin won that first round. The second round just as close, both men trading back and forth. Finally, about halfway through that round, Magny really started to put some things together, landed some combos, got some clinch control along the fence, and that's what you got to do, which is exactly what I said he was going to do, and I thought he would have done earlier, get it going along the fence. That's all he had to do. That's exactly what he did there. So probably won the second round. So it seemed as though it was probably 1-1 going into the final round, and both men gave it everything they had going into the third. And thanks to that experience and his extra stamina, because that was pretty obvious too. And I mean, Magny doesn't run out of steam even in 5-round fights. So there's no way he's going to run out of steam in a 3-rounder, not a chance. So he used all that experience, all that stamina, just shut down everything Griffin had, used some clinch, got him to the ground too. And like I said, that's exactly what I thought he was going to do. That's why I thought it was going to be a pretty clear, even 30-27 originally before the fight happened. I thought it was going to be like, okay, you know, Griffin will have some opportunities here and there. But I thought the clinch in the ground, you know, we were going to see a fairly easy decision, let's say, for Magny. But yeah, he easily did win 29-28. I thought, in fact, it was so dominant, it could have even been a 10-8 in the last round. I thought I wouldn't have given it that, but I've seen some judges give 10-8s to a lot less than that. In the end, amazingly, the judges saw it 29-28, 28-29, and 29-28 for Magny. So it was a split decision. I wouldn't say it was completely insane, but, you know, there was a much better case, let's say, for it being Neil Magny. And of course, that would have been the second round. That was pretty close. So do I agree with that judge? No, but it was close enough where it's like, I'm not mad at it, and I'm not going to blast somebody online for it. That's for sure. The next one, again, this was the top matchup of the night for me. I mean, I could not wait for this one. This was Askar Askarov, Kai Kara-France. Could not wait for this one. I mean, we all knew this was going to be good. There was still, of course, a little bit of booing from what I remember. But yeah, I had Askarov by decision going into this, but I did say it should be kind of close. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be this close, but I thought that Askarov was going to control Kai Kara-France a lot more on the ground and along the fence, just based on his style and what Kai Kara-France isn't necessarily the best at. Yeah, they took their time getting going, which again, I think that's where the booing came in. But Kai Kara-France made the first move, opened a small cut above or below the eye of Askar. After that, though, Askar used his dominant wrestling to get Kai to the ground and smothered him the entire round, threatened some submission attempts all over the place, and almost finished him more than once, really. So clear first round win for Askar. The second round, though, he tried to get it going again, but ended up walking into some wild stand up from Kai Kara-France. And then Kai really started to steal the momentum from there. I guess he probably kind of scared Askar a little bit, because you don't really want to shoot in for all these takedowns if you're going to get lit up every single time. Of course not. Landed some crisp combos, big stripes, stumbled Askarov more than once. So very clear 1-1, I would say, going into the final round. So, really depended on what was going to happen there. Askar controlled the round right from the start, I thought, doing some amazing work along the fence, but Kai Kara-France did get out of it, and the rest of the fight was a lot of electric striking from both guys, capped off by some late clinch work from Askar. So, personally, I thought it was 29-28 Askarov, I will say, and it's not, again, I'm very unbiased when it comes to my judging and my bets. I keep them very separate. I really did think, though, that Askarov won at 29-28, but I heard online, though, some people were saying, okay, maybe Askar didn't have as effective wrestling in the third round, while Kai Kara-France was still being pretty good with his striking. So, it was close enough where I was like, okay, like maybe he won that third round to win the decision. So, again, I'm not calling it a robbery, and I'm not gonna blast the judges on this one for picking who I thought was the wrong one. But, I thought Askar did enough. I really did. That being said, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for Kai Kara-France. I really am. I'm a fan. I'm so glad that he won, even though it did mess up most of my bets. That's okay. Again, I'm a fight fan above a lot of it, I wouldn't say everything else, but, I just want to see good people win, and I just want to see good fights. And that's what we saw. We saw a good fight. Yeah. So what's next? Both of them did. Loki thinks he heard the door. It was just somebody above. Anyway. Yeah, going into this, Askar seemed to be the clear choice for the next title shot, except for maybe Pantoja. And although I thought Askarov edged ahead in the decision, like I said, I don't think it was Robbie. I think it was close enough, and they both really looked good. And Kai Kara-France really just proved what I really learned from it was that really he's good enough. He's good enough to actually maybe compete for the title. I really do think that. And I definitely did not think I was going to say that going into this fight. If that's the case, though, that Kai Kara-France did enough to win, and it was that close with somebody who was the number one contender in most people's minds, logically, then he should get the next title shot or Pantoja. Apparently, though, I don't think it's got a date yet, but apparently a contract has been signed, maybe for Figgy and Moreno number 4, because the first 3 weren't enough, of course. So what we're probably going to see is we're going to see that. And then, of course, I would say what would make the most sense is either we get Kai Kara-France getting the shot after that, or we see a rematch with him and Pantoja, because they did. Oh, that was for Askarov. Lol. Okay. Pantoja would make sense there too. But anyway, yeah. So either he waits for the next title shot or he goes against Pantoja. As for Askarov, I mentioned it before, maybe Nicolau. But I think he's still very clearly one of the top contenders. So if Kai Kara-France does get the title shot, what I was saying is he should get his rematch against Pantoja. Askar did win it the first time around, But with Pantoja looking so good and Askarov losing this one, it actually might make sense to redo that one. It might make sense to make a rematch out of it. But yeah, Nicolau would make a lot of sense too. But, you know, it's so tough because, and this is why I wanted, like maybe Cara France to get the title shot, or even Pantoja to get the title shot right now, because you're doing 4 fights in a row for the title between the same 2 guys. The rest of the division, especially the top 5, is just jam packed. And what do you do with that? That's why I wanted to keep it moving before, but I guess they're not going to do that, supposedly. Again, I haven't heard a confirmed date yet, but I keep hearing from a lot of people that that's already happening. So I don't know. But yeah, I just don't know what's going to happen there. All I know is I'm excited to see Kai Kara France again. So after that, we had my fight of the night here, Matt Brown and Brian Barberena. We knew this was going to be close. I said how dead even it was. I had picked Brown going into this, and I thought he might have even been able to get a finish here, because a lot of them, well, both of them really, they've been getting either finished or getting finishes. So it made sense to me that Brown was going to get a finish here, but it was so close, just like we thought. What was I going to say here? It was a tight striking matchup, of course, but the fight switched when Brown dragged Barberena to the ground and pushed him along the fence there. From there, though, it might have been Brian leading the striking, which may have stolen the round away. I don't know. Again, it was so tough. The first round alone, I have no idea who won that. The second started the same way. Barberena landed some decent combos, and Brown stole the momentum by dragging him to the ground. Again, like after doing fairly well on the ground, Barberena flipped the script, got back up, landed some big shots at on Brown. So I kind of figured he probably won that, and that it might have been 1-1, but honestly, it was so close on either side that really it could have been 2-0 on either side here, really. I kind of saw it 1-1, but again, the judges really could have seen anything happen here because it was really that close. I mean, it was a great fight. Even though he seemed somewhat tired, Brown continued the same strategy as the other rounds, got an early takedown, did some decent work, cut Brian up, and made it a little bit bloodier because that's what the fight was missing. From there, Brown got another takedown, but the rest of the action really put this fight among the best of the year so far. It was so good. It was a really, really good fight. Both of them were exhausted. Both of them landed huge shots, stumbled each other, wobbling all over the place. I mean, it was insane. It was a tight one. To me, it kind of seemed like Brian won it 29-28 just because of the last round. But again, anything was up for grabs. Anything was up for grabs on those judges' cards. The judges were split. 2 of them saw it like I did, 29-28 for Brian. And then one, of course, saw it 29-28 for Brown. Again, it was so close. I could have seen that going either way. The co-main, and like I said, that did end up being fight of the night, at least for me. The closest one, obviously, would have been Askarov and Kai Kara France. That was a close runner-up, but I went with Brown and Barberena because it was just so insane the whole way through. No room for booze in that one. It was just pure action all the way through. The co-main, Joanne Wood, Alexa Grasso. Another ranked fight here between the women. I had Grasso by decision going into this because there was just a lot more going in her direction, I would say. Yeah. Oh, she was the fairly easy favorite on according to the odds. I wouldn't have said that it was that one-sided, but apparently it ended up being that one-sided. It started off fast and furious. Grasso showed extra speed and precision. Of course, she is the boxer. That makes so much sense. From there, though, Grasso managed to bring the fight to the ground and control Wood for a couple of minutes. Nobody really saw that one coming. Likely solidified that round on the cards from there already. And then she ended up letting her back up. Makes sense. Again, she is a boxer, so I already thought it was kind of weird that she dragged it to the ground. But then, surprisingly, she actually went for it again, quickly dragged Wood back to the ground, took her back, and then it was all over. Grasso slipped her arm under the chin, got an amazing first round submission, and it was the first submission in her entire career. And I wasn't sure. I was thinking of maybe making that the submission of the night. I wasn't really sure. Of course, I ended up going with Kizreev, but this one really could have deserved it too. Yeah, amazing. And again, like nobody would have expected the boxer Grasso to be doing that, but it just shows how good she's getting. And that's exactly why she did it. She even said it in the post-fight press conference, or actually not in the conference. Oh, it was actually in the conference, I think. Well, anyway, when she was being interviewed, regardless of where that was, she said that she did that because she wanted to prove that she's been working on the wrestling more, that she is capable on the ground. And she definitely did that. And I am so much more impressed by Grasso than I was before. I really am. She's proved that she's dangerous on the ground now. She's put herself in a position to fight somebody in the top 5. That's what I think. We mentioned Fior taking Chookagian. That makes so much sense. We have Santos taking on Valentina. So the only person left, well, there's only 2 people left, Murphy and Maya. After tonight, Maya would make the most sense, of course, considering the timing, of course. I mean, they literally fought on the same card. So why not make that? That would make a lot of sense. And it would really put her to the test because Maya, of course, is very good on the ground. But it would also test Maya because, of course, I mean, Fior just tore her apart on the feet. So can Grasso do the same thing? I don't know. I think it's going to be a very interesting fight. And I think that's the way to go. And I really hope that that's what they do with it because I think that's perfect for both of them. And it really sets it up for that next kind of push to the top, let's say. Because then if Grasso wins that, or Maya, who knows, then it's like, okay, maybe then they fight Chookagian and then they get the next title shot after that. Why not? Why not? Or maybe they fight Andrade after. Who knows? Anyways, it's looking good. It's looking good. That division is really starting to shape up and get more interesting, and that's what we want to see in the women's divisions. So flyweight and strawweight are looking great. We just need to see something going. We need to see anything going at bantamweight. Anything at all, anything. And then featherweight, good God, it's even worse. There's no rankings in place. It's all up for grabs. Who knows? I want to see both of them get going. I mean, it's crazy. There's so many good women fighters out there and we're not seeing anything. It really bugs me. I mean, it really bugs all MMA fans all true MMA fans, I should say, because there are some MMA fans that really just don't care about women's MMA, which I think is terrible. So the true MMA fans know we need to see more good women's fights. And it looks like we're getting them in those 2 divisions for now, which is great to see. Great up and coming talent. You'll love to see it. Main event. Moving on. Wow, I can't believe this is going to take me an hour, even though we didn't talk about anything. There's nothing for this week. Amazing. Curtis Blaydes, Chris Daukaus, main event. I was going Blaydes by decision on this, and I think a lot of people, including Blaydes himself, thought was going to happen, is he thought he was going to just use his wrestling to just kind of control Daukaus, use the clinch along the fence, do some takedowns, control him on the ground. He even said that in his interview after the fight that he thought that's the way this was going to go. He did not think he was going to get a KO here. That is for sure. As expected, in a 5-round heavyweight fight, they both took it fairly slow in the first round. Each of them had their very clear advantage here. Blaydes had the very clear power advantage buckling Dawkins at one point in the first round. And Chris had the clear speed advantage, which again makes a lot of sense considering I think he was 20 pounds lighter, and he's a fairly small heavyweight as it is. So that made a lot of sense. In the second, though, it was over right as it started. I mean, I don't remember what the timing was. I think it was less than 10 seconds into the second round, something like that, 10, 15 seconds. And Blaydes landed a huge one, dropped Dawkins to the ground, finished him with some ground and pound to get a second round TKO win. Amazing. Now, what does that mean for the heavyweights? I don't know. Like there's just so much going on in the heavyweights right now, especially since we're probably going to be seeing another interim belt. The only thing that this fight really showed us, and I hate to say it, and Blaydes said it too. He said it at the post-fight press conference, and I mean it in the same way, in the nicest way possible, just like Blaydes said it in the nicest way possible. I don't think Dawkins really belongs at heavyweight. And Blaydes said it best. He said it, this is not a direct quote, but this is almost a direct quote. He said, just because you weigh 240 pounds doesn't mean that you should be competing at heavyweight. And I think that is perfectly said. He's just not strong enough. That's really all it is. He's just not big enough to compete at heavyweight. He's got the skill, he's got some power, and he can compete. He can still compete with the lower ranked heavyweights, let's say, 10 to 15, maybe some of the ones from 5 to 10. But anything above that, I don't think he's ever, no matter what he does, I don't think he's ever truly going to be able to compete in the top 5. And that's exactly what Blaydes was saying. And I 100% agree. His future is in the light heavyweight division, I would say. And you know what? I think he would be amazing down there. I think he could easily be in the top 5 down there, Dawkins. I really do. He's only, like I said, 240 pounds. It sounds like a lot, but you know what? He's got a lot of flubber going around. He's not like Blaydes, Ngannou, Gane, Stipe. They're cutting down. Some of them are cutting down to make weight, and they're shredded. Like, these guys are pure muscle. So, I mean, they're not pure muscle. Ngannou is pure muscle. The other three, or Gane actually is kind of pure muscle too. But the other ones, they're still built like a heavyweight. They're huge, and there is no universe where they're ever making a 205. Whereas Dawkins can do that. He can, it'd be tough. It'd probably take him about a year to get down there, maybe, to cut all the weight to get down there and be comfortable down there. But I think that is the right way to go for his career. I think he should go down to light heavyweight. And I really think he would easily be in the top 5 down there. Because light heavyweight, well, it's not looking good these days. There's not a whole lot going on. There's a couple of guys, and we've been talking about them. Craig is making a little bit of a name, but man, he's still good. Hill is on his way up. He's looking okay. Smith is always okay. Yuri's the new champ. He's going to win for sure. He looks incredible. So they've got him. But then you've got Jan and Glover, who are probably like a year or two away from retiring, I would say. So where's the future? Where's the future for light heavyweight? The future could be Dawkins. It really could be. He's just got to go down there and do that. So that's what I think is next for him. As for Blaydes, he's right that he deserves the top 3. I think so. He wants the interim title shot against Gane. He might get it, but I honestly hope he doesn't. I said this last week. I think a massive, massive pay-per-view. Honestly, one of the biggest, maybe one of the biggest we've ever seen. Definitely in terms of European numbers. This would do numbers. This would be absolutely insane. I think the obvious choice, Aspinall, Gane, interim belt in London or Paris this year, that would be absolutely insane. Could you imagine? You've got the British versus the French argument going on. You've got Gane, who people think, could really be the next true champion. And you've got Aspinall, who's coming up, just destroying people all over the place. I mean, what more? Seriously, what more could you possibly want in an interim title belt? And then you throw it in London or Paris, where one of the two is from. I mean, like, you could not ask for more. I cannot say enough how badly I want that to happen. And I don't know why I'm the only person saying this. I haven't seen a single person on Twitter saying this, but I think it's so obvious, and it would be so incredible to see that happen. So I want that to happen for the belt. That aside, so what's next for Blades then? I think Tuivasa or Stipe would make a lot more sense. Tuivasa needs to be more challenged, and Tuivasa's only fought strikers. Like, he's made it to the top 5 by some wild turn of events, and he's only fought strikers. That's crazy. Like, that needs to stop. I mean, like, yes, it's entertaining. We all love it. We love to see the shoeies. We love to see Tuivasa get a KO. I mean, it's incredible to watch. It's so much fun. But if you're going to take him seriously as an actual title contender, he needs to be well-rounded. So he needs to fight somebody like not like Dawkins. I just said Dawkins so many times, I'm confused now. He needs to fight somebody like Blades. That's the only thing that makes sense for Tuivasa. And it makes a lot of sense for Blades too, because, I mean, he lost to Lewis, and got caught by the KO. He just KO'd a lighter heavyweight. So let's see him put that to the test again. Let's throw another striker at him. It makes sense for both of them. I think that's the perfect fight for both of them. Stipe also makes a lot of sense because it's on the way up. Also, Stipe hasn't fought in a little over a year, because apparently it was a year ago on Saturday that he lost the belt. So he hasn't fought in a year. He hasn't fought since then. So he needs to fight down. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but not too far down. He still hasn't lost. He's been in only title fights for quite a while now. So, I mean, you got to remember how good he is. But you should throw him back in against somebody who is in title contention, let's say. And I would say that should be Blades. It makes a lot of sense. That's what I think is next for everybody in the heavyweight division. But I mean, there's so many. I mean, John Jones. Where's John Jones in all this? Maybe Jones fights Stipe. Who knows? Maybe even he's going to be fighting for the interim belt. I have no idea. I mean, really, what you could do is in England, if it ends up being in London for the pay-per-view for the interim belt, do Aspinall Jones for the interim belt. If you want to do, if it's in Paris, maybe you make it Jones and Gunn for the interim belt. I mean, like, I think you got to do an interim belt in either London or Paris. It makes so much sense. Just do it. I hope it I'm going to go insane if this doesn't happen, because it's so obvious to me for the UFC to do that. It's you got to do it. You got to do it. Anyway, that's enough for me. I'll tell you the bonuses of the night. It was Chris Gutierrez. I was right. So I did remember that was KO of the night. My sub of the night, like I said, Aliashkab Kazriv. Brawl of the night, Matt Brown, Brian Barberena, of course. And my most valuable fighter was Kai Kara France. He was the heavy underdog going into this. He didn't necessarily have the most dominant win. I didn't even think he personally won. But you can't argue that what he did was very, very impressive. He gave Askar his first loss. His first loss in his entire career, he gave it to him, and survived some submission attempts from one of the best wrestlers in the flyweight division. So, I mean, to say all of that and then to end up edging ahead on the cards, I mean, that's just icing on the cake. Amazing. Like, yeah, very much deserved the most valuable fighter of the week. In fact, I might as well announce my bonuses for the month, since, of course, next time we stream, it is not going to be this month anymore. And, of course, we're going to have so much to talk about with UFC 273 or whatever number it is. So I might as well tell you the bonuses right now. My brawl of the month, I'm going to flip them up here so I can see what I'm talking about. My brawl of the month, I'll go in order actually of what I always do. My KO of the month, how could you go anywhere else than, of course, with Molly Meatball McCann destroying Luana Carolina with a spinning elbow. I mean, like I said before, that is easily in contention for KO of the month. What are these? Best followers? No, we don't need that. A lot of, there's some bots on our Twitch. But anyway, what was I going to say? Moving on from the bots. Molly McCann, very clear choice for KO of the month. Sub of the month, I ended up giving it to Tom Aspinall for last week because you know what? Volkov, one of the hardest people in heavyweight, really in heavyweight history to finish. And I mean, he's so experienced. And to finish him in the second round by submission like that, I mean, in a what was it, an arm lock or something like that? That's a super rare thing to do too. I mean, just could not be more impressed with what Aspinall did. So that was my pick for submission of the month. Brawl of the month. I mean, it wasn't the longest fight, not by any means, but my God, was it the most exciting fight. And this actually might be my most exciting fight of the year so far, was Terrence McKinney and Drew Dober in that absolutely wild fight. That was my brawl of the month. And seriously, if you still haven't seen that fight, look it up. Seriously, look it up. YouTube it. Do something. Google it, bro. Google it. Terrence McKinney, Drew Dober. Watch that one. I mean, it's so crazy to see. Then what did we have? Most valuable fighter for women. I picked Marina Moroz. Of course, I had to, because just to see what she's gone through. She came in, was fighting one of her other training partners from before. That already is pretty impressive. Got the win. But I mean, all of that, of course, overshadowed by the fact that she is from the Ukraine, had to keep all of that out of her head, somehow overcome that and get a win. And then, with the whole speech after dedicating it, and then to go back, of course, to the Ukraine, just all of that. I mean, that's so crazy to overcome and to be thinking about the entire time while you're training, while you're fighting. And it's just so crazy to think about. So, of course, I gave her the most valuable female fighter, I should say, of the month. The most valuable male fighter. This one was a close one, honestly. There were so many choices. But considering what he just did, giving Askarov his first loss, and proving himself against all odds, seriously, he was a pretty decent sized underdog in this one, overcoming all of that to now becoming really the number 2 contender, let's say, right behind Moreno. Kai Kara France, I would say, deserved the most valuable fighter of the month for doing all of that. But I mean, there were so many good male fighters this month. It was hard to choose. I almost chose Paddy the Baddy just because of everything that he's lived up to and everything that he's done. I mean, that deserves some recognition. And I mean, just so much. There's so much that happened this month. Normally, it's so obvious, at least for the most part, to pick these monthly bonuses, because it's really just one thing that has to stand out, amongst all the other ones. But this one was so hard, especially because of what happened in London, all of those amazing fights. It was so hard to pick one, but I had to go with Kai Kara France there just because of everything that he just did. The rookie of the month. I mean, there was no competition here. It had to be Muhammad Mokaev. I mean, he is the most promising rookie, I would say, yet. Destroyed his opponent, got the second fastest submission in that division's history. I can't remember the division right now. I think it might have been flyweight or maybe a bantamweight. I can't remember. I think it was flyweight though. Anyway, so to do that in your debut, and to still be undefeated, and he's what, 6-0 now? I mean, that's barely anything. Like, that's crazy. I mean, that is definitely rookie of the month material right there. Absolutely incredible. And then my final bonus, of course, was the worst judges card of the month. And honestly, I'm shocked. I'm actually happy that it took me a while to figure out which one to do. Because honestly, there was only one fight this entire month where I thought the judge kind of fucked up. Like, really, I don't know what this judge was really kind of watching. But yeah, I'm surprised. Normally, it's like every single week we see terrible judges card after terrible judges card, which is why I made this bonus in the first place. But this month, finally, we actually saw the judges do a fantastic job. And like I said, this was the only card, literally the only one card, singular judges card that I thought, well, this is just wrong. And that was in Corey McKenna versus Elise Reed. Derek Cleary had it 30-27 for McKenna. And although I thought McKenna was doing okay and I wanted her to win, she was by no means winning that fight 30-27. You could possibly argue it 29-28, maybe. But to say 30-27, you're blind. So that is the one card really in the entire month that I had a problem with. And let's keep it that way. Let's I don't want to have that bonus. I don't need to have that bonus, but it keeps happening. This month again was better than all the other ones, but my God, I had so much to choose from in February, and I had a decent amount to choose from in January too. So let's hope in April it stays the way it did this month and we don't really have any judges problems. Anyway, that's it for me today. If you want to hear about all the other sports, of course, Area 51 has you covered. If you want to follow anything that I do, it's all on Instagram and Twitter and the YouTubes and the Twitch. It's all linked in the description below. Next week, of course, we're going to be talking about the pay-per-view, and my God, I can't wait for that. I'm actually putting, I'm going to be putting more money into the betting just this week because I know this is the money week. This is the cash week coming up. I can smell it. I can smell the money coming at me. Oh my God, I can't wait. But yeah, and you know what? If you want to sign up with Bet99 before next week, you can see, well, it's not a link, but there is a link in the description below, but you'll see what I'm talking about. There's boosted odds and it'll be in the little trailer that I sign off to. That's it for me this week. I'll see you next week. I can't wait. Thanks for watching. See you next time.